Hey guys, it's Uncle Howie again, and I'm here today to just assist, if I may, walk through decisions and predicaments and offer some insight, hopefully some wisdom. Today, our topic is to avoid controversy. And I know that so many of us are raised on drama, and we're raised in very dramatic fashion. And the television is almost always on, and there's always a story being told. There's always a little bit of gossip happening, and sometimes it feels like we just need to be a part of that. And I want to just tell you that as you mature and as you make decisions that impact other people, as you decide for yourself to only do things that are going to benefit the people that mean the most to you. You make the decision and the declaration that you're going to live your life as a life of sacrifice for other people. As you become more and more of a fully developed man, you have to learn how to spot and avoid controversy, because most controversy is incredibly useless. I mean, it is needless. 95% of every argument that I've ever been in, I could have avoided because the topic just really wasn't all that important. And, I'm not saying that you can't participate in a healthy debate. And I'm not saying that if something's really important to you that you can't argue about it. I mean, sometimes you just have to stand your ground, and everybody understands that. But I think that a lot of times we get dragged into drama, and it's useless, it's pointless. And so I want to share this. I found this in a dictionary. It's a definition of to contrive. And it says to manage to do something foolish or create an undesirable situation. And so a lot of people like to just stir the pot and make sure that everybody else is in a tizzy or people are upset. I've known many people who like to start a big political debate and then just back off and see how everyone responds, sort of chime in and throw some jabs and some jibes, do a little prickly commentary, and it seems like their purpose is not always wholesome, and it often leads to a really foolish waste of our time. And so an ancient writer of history and wisdom, a guy named Paul, who I love, he wrote this in the New Testament. It says, "Stay away from all the foolish arguments of the immature, for these disputes will only generate more conflict." Stay away from the arguments of the immature because it only creates conflict. And so a lot of times we find ourselves living with the consequences and the result of being in an altercation or a fight or even a heavy argument with someone that we actually really love. And we look back on that and we realize that nothing that we were talking about was really all that important. And so a lot of times what it means to put someone above yourself or to put someone before your own needs is to listen well and then really thoughtfully and clearly decide. Don't be roped into a debate and don't be forced into an argument. Decide if what is being discussed is actually worth the time and effort of a debate. And if it's not, it's totally okay to say, you know what, today I think I'm just going to be the referee. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't really have a side. And so I'm just going to back off and let you guys discuss this without me, because it turns out that it's mostly just sort of pointless, meaningless, jagged drama and debate. And so how do you avoid these things? The first thing, and we talked about this in our last session together, our last vlog, was we talked about setting a goal, setting a declaration of what you intend to do, or really more importantly, what you intend to be. And a lot of this has to do with how we think and what we believe about ourselves. And so some people feel like they were just made for conflict. They're always in a fight, they're always in an argument, they always have to be right. And nobody likes that person. Nobody wants to be with or around someone who isn't stable And so sometimes just to be the stable force in a room, to be the stable adult in a relationship, to be the stable provider for a family, sometimes it's best just to avoid the controversy and to back away from the drama. Sometimes it's a really good idea just to take a walk, take a drive, and get away from it, because you have to ask yourself, if I win this conversation, if I win this debate, if I win this argument, what is it going to produce for the people in my life that I care about the most? What is this going to do for me? Is it going to make me come across as assertive and intelligent, decisive and wise? Or is this just going to make me sound like I'm mean and I'm demanding my way? And so if you're going to put other people's needs above your own, if you're going to be the kind of man that's fully developed, mature, and takes care of the needs of other people, let me recommend that you take a piece of paper right now and you write down a couple of goals. Number one, fill in your name. Johnny, Bobby, Max, Bill, Jeremiah, Jose, whatever your name is, write it down. I, Jose Juarez Jr. I, John Jones Jr. I, Billy Bob White Thornton III. Whatever your name is, write it down on a piece of paper, and right underneath your name, I, sign your name, am determined and committed to work on myself and be a better man. I want to be a better man. And you put that in writing. Step 1 is to declare it. Step 2 is to put it in writing. Step 3 is to share that with someone else and say, hey, in order for this to work, in order for me to become a fully developed man, in order for me to be the kind of man that takes care of other people and puts other people's needs above my own, I'm going to need some help and some accountability. And so the first step is make your declaration. Second step, write it down. Third step, share that with someone who can hold you accountable. Share it with someone you admire. Maybe your uncle, maybe an older neighbor, maybe your favorite teacher from school, maybe a pastor, maybe your best friend who's just more mature and has their life together more than you. Whoever you share it with, just make sure it's someone who, when they speak, they have your attention, and you're essentially giving them permission to speak into your life. I've had counselors that I've paid for this. I've had friends and coworkers who I've looked up to in the past and truly admired and said, hey, ancient Hebrew wisdom says that fools desire flattery, but a wise man would rather have a blow from a stick in the hand of a friend. In other words, I'd rather have a friend who I've given permission to whack me with a stick than just to hear people tell me how great I am. I really don't care how great you think I am. I don't care how great anyone thinks I am. What I care about is, can the people in my life, especially the older men in my life, who, by the way, are becoming fewer and fewer, but as the older men in my life evaluate me, and I give them permission to do so, I want to know if they believe that I am doing the work to be a better man, to be a better man in the community, to be a better man to my wife, to be a better man in my faith, to be a better man in my church. I want to know if people can see the evidence that I have made the declaration and written it down and have decided to take steps in order to become more fully developed, more mature, more sacrificial, and more useful to the people that mean the most in my life. If that is not your goal, if you just want everything you can get out of life and you honestly don't care about other people, if you don't care how your mom feels, if you don't care how your wife feels, if you don't care how your kids feel, if you just don't care about how other people feel, then these videos are not going to help you and you're going to wind up hating me. So let me just give you some advice right now. Don't waste your time with Uncle Howie's podcast if your goal is not explicitly to be a better person. And if it is, then the first thing that we talked about is that even though there might occasionally be a good reason to fight. I mean, if someone attacks my wife, I'm gonna fight them. I don't care if I win or if I lose or if it's a tie. I don't care if I get arrested. If someone physically tries to harm my family, I am definitely gonna defend them. There's a time and a place for everything. But most of the fights that we get into are usually just a risk and a waste of time. And so part of my plan as I got older and more mature was to write that down and to say, I am going to get to the point where unless someone else is in danger, I am no longer going to use violence or the threat of violence as a way to solve my problems. And so I just started to learn how to talk my way out of things and to back away, which was very, very difficult at first. And over time, it's been almost 20 years since I've had to actually use violence or the threat of violence to get something important accomplished. And I'm old now. My hip hurts. I hope I never have to again. But if I do, I still remember how to get it done. I know how to do it. I just don't want to anymore because the risk is almost never as valuable as the reward. Whatever you're getting out of fighting, it's just not worth it. And then today we're talking about avoiding controversy, avoiding arguments and debates over stupid crap that doesn't actually help other people. You walk into a situation and you hear people, arguing about astronomy, or they're debating how important, science is, or whether or not we should listen to the doctors, or whatever the debate is. And I would say 90% of all political debates really a waste of your time because, you may get a vote and you may be heard, but you are not going to be the one that makes the decision that impacts tons of people. And so no matter how much you've read and how much you know, it's usually better, unless your goal is genuinely to help people understand something, it's better just to stay out of controversial things. It's foolishness, and it leads to regret. Controversy is a trap that leads to regret. And so, a lot of my childhood I spent being horrified of walking through a forest, walking through the woods, and stepping in quicksand. Have you guys seen the cartoons that were out when I was a kid? Where there's always, someone that seems to be trapped in quicksand and it's up to their waist and they're sinking slowly and people can't pull them out. And, I was horribly afraid that one day I was going to step in some quicksand and yell and scream and pray, and there would be nobody there to pull me out of that quicksand. And one day I noticed I was in the Army, and I was walking through a heavily wooded area full of snakes and scorpions and crazy critters, and I asked someone else if they'd ever seen actual quicksand, and they kind of laughed and said no. And I said, I was expecting to run into quicksand a lot more regularly than I do. And we kind of laughed about that, and that became a big joke in our platoon. Like, be careful, watch out for the quicksand. And so it's almost like quicksand. Even though I was trained by the TV shows and cartoons I watched as a child to be afraid of quicksand, I've literally never stepped foot in quicksand. And so most of the things that people are worried about are an incredible waste of time. And so one of my favorite pieces of wisdom from Scripture, it says, don't worry about anything. Don't have anxiety about anything. Don't allow yourself to be caught up in anxious thoughts, but in everything through prayer and supplication. And supplication just means asking for help. Just say, hey, God, I'm going to need some help now. Through prayer and supplication, your heart will be made glad. So don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, through prayer and supplication, make your requests known to God, and you'll be given the wisdom that you need. You'll be given the route of escape that you need. In other words, if you worry about something, then you're putting faith in an unknown thing that might or might not happen. But if you say, you know what, God, I can't see through this forest. I don't know what's going to happen at the end of this conflict. I don't know how this thing in my marriage or in my relationship with my parents is going to work out. But I know this, I could really use some help right now. And what happens is sometimes God or you friends of mine who are going through the 12-step program of AA, you call it your higher power. A a lot of times what happens is God brings a person into your life to give you just a little nudge or a little pull, a little step in the right direction. They might even just look down the right path for you to go down. And sometimes just the right nod from the right man at the right time is all you need to make a really good decision so that you can be set up and ready and prepared to live a sacrificial life, and put other people's needs above your own. And then a lot of times the storm comes, the lock on the door breaks just in time to get you out. The fire is extinguished and it seems like a miracle. And a lot of times it is a miracle. A lot of times when we just cry out and say, I'm going to need some help with this. I'm going to need some help avoiding some controversy. I'm going to need some help staying away from things that others contrive just to create foolishness and to see who they can snare and get into trouble. I'm going to need some help not resorting to violence. It's not natural for me. It isn't the way I grew up. It isn't the way I was trained. It isn't even what I believe in. But I do believe that something stronger and higher than myself. I believe that there is a God who cares about us very deeply, and when we cry out to him, that act of humility stimulates, it inspires God to act on our behalf. And I know this sounds absolutely insane to some of you, because most of you probably didn't grow up in church. And I think if you've seen all my videos, you know that I did not grow up in church. And when I first started hearing people talk about this, I thought it was ridiculous. And I literally remember the day that I thought, even if I did believe in all of these stories about God and Jesus and the cross and the resurrection, if I believed all that, I still wouldn't want to be a Christian. I don't like Christians. They don't do all the things I do. They don't have a lot of fun. They dress funny on Sundays. I don't want to be a part of that tribe. And it took me months of wrestling through this. And what I saw was that the requirement to be adopted, to be put into a position where you can genuinely consider God your Father, it requires a step of humility. It's almost like I heard a voice from behind me, and I was pretty happy on the path that I wasn't happy, but I was prideful, and I was sure that I was on the path of my own choosing. What I didn't know is that I was just a prisoner to my desires. So I kept hearing this voice, and it seemed like it was behind me, and I did not want to turn around. I didn't want to adjust myself to that voice. I didn't want to repent, which is exactly what turning around looks like. And so at some point, after months of wrestling through this pride versus humility, I finally adjusted. I turned my heart towards the voice, and what I saw was a very narrow path. And I just want to tell you this. If you want to be the kind of man that can really help people, it is going to require faith in something much bigger than yourself. And so if you're not prepared for that, that's okay. Keep watching these videos, and just step by step, we'll tackle one issue at a time. And hopefully I can encourage you to make some good decisions, to put those decisions in writing, and to ask someone in your life that's trustworthy to hold you accountable. And as we set these goals together, you'll see that step by step, you will feel more and more challenged and encouraged. And at some point, you will make a decision that you will become a fully developed adult man whose desire is to serve other people and to live a life that counts for other people's benefit. Look, some people just don't care about that, and I understand. Some people don't want to hear about God, and I understand. I'm not here to force my religion or my faith down your throat, but I have to say, I can't think about all of the things that have happened in my life and leave out some of the details where I just cried out to God, and it seems like God came to help me. And that all really started when I was humble enough to turn my heart away from the path of my own choosing to a much smaller, narrower, and it seemed like a darker path. It seemed like all of the help I needed was going to come from taking a different direction in life. And when I did that, I found that I had some brothers and sisters. I had some teammates who were really sold out, and I got some mentors along the way. And I'd love to sit down with every one of you young guys and have a cup of coffee and listen to you tell me your whole story. But I don't have time. I work and I do this and I have a wife. And so, there's no way I could sit down and have a cup of coffee with 1,000 guys. But there is another man in your community, maybe in your family, maybe not in your family. My first experience having a really good man in my life was my foster dad, Fred Kinslow. I lived with him for 4 years, and I am convinced that I would either be in prison or dead if God did not bring Fred Kinslow into my life. And so that's my prayer for you, that God would give you your very own Fred, that he would give you a real live man in your life that is someone you can look up to, someone who's trying to live for other people. And I don't mean just getting the bag by any means necessary to pay for things. I mean living a good and noble and legal and moral life. And they are setting an example for other young men in the community. So, step number 1, admit you need some help. Step number 2, try to turn your heart towards that narrow path. Step number 3, write down your goals and ask someone to hold you accountable. Step number 4, quit fighting all the time. Don't use violence as a way to solve your problems. And step number 5, try to avoid controversy. It is such a waste of your time. Listen, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next week.